Margot Dubois never imagined that her voice would become her salvation. Born on a humid October evening in 1993 in the northern districts of Marseille, she arrived into a world that offered little promise. Her mother, Celine, was barely 17 when she gave birth, alone in a public hospital with no partner, no family support, and no clear path forward. The father had disappeared months before, leaving Celine to navigate motherhood in one of France's most challenging neighborhoods. The early years were marked by relentless struggle. Celine worked cleaning offices at night, stocking shelves at supermarkets during early morning hours, doing whatever jobs would have her. They lived in a cramped studio in the Quartier Nord, where the walls were thin and the winters were cold. Some nights, Celine would hold her daughter close and cry silently, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake bringing a child into circumstances so harsh. There were weeks when dinner consisted of pasta with butter, nothing more, stretched across 7 days because that was all the budget allowed. But Celine possessed something that poverty could not steal: determination forged in desperation. She refused to let her daughter become another statistic, another girl from the projects with limited options and diminished dreams. She took Margot to the Catholic Church in their arrondissement every Sunday, not just for spiritual guidance but for the community. The structure, the sense that something larger existed beyond their small apartment. Slowly, painfully, through years of sacrifice that aged Celine before her time, she managed to provide stability. By the time Margot reached adolescence, Celine had secured better employment, moved them to a decent apartment in Salon-Provence, and even put aside small amounts for her daughter's education. Margot attended Lycée Paul Cézanne, where she discovered an unexpected sanctuary in the performing arts programs. She joined the choir, her voice cutting through the assembly hall with a clarity that made teachers pause mid-conversation. She participated in school theatrical productions, finding that on stage she could become someone else, someone without the weight of their circumstances pressing down on every moment. Music became her language for emotions she could not otherwise express. The stage became the one place where her past did not define her present. After completing her baccalaureate, Margot enrolled in a vocational nursing program at a technical institute in Aix-en-Provence. For 2 years, she studied to become an aide-soignante, learning the practical skills of caregiving. Her mother was proud, envisioning a stable career for her daughter in France's healthcare system. But Margot felt something pulling her in a different direction. The medical field was honorable, necessary, important, yet it was not hers. She switched to business administration, spending another 2 years learning about commerce, marketing, and entrepreneurship. She was searching, trying to find the intersection between passion and practicality. The answer came through music. In 2017, at 24, Margot made a decision that terrified her mother. She deferred her degree and committed fully to launching a music career. She began performing at small venues in Marseille, Aix, and Lyon, developing a style that blended contemporary French pop with North African influences, reflecting the diverse culture of her neighborhood. Her stage name, simply Margot, began appearing on flyers at underground clubs and local festivals. But beneath the confident performances and growing social media following, Margot carried a secret that had shaped her in ways both devastating and defining. In 2018, during an interview with a French music blog, she revealed what she had hidden for years. From age 12 until 17, her mother's boyfriend at the time had sexually abused her. The abuse was systematic, occurring whenever Celine worked night shifts. He threatened that if Margot told anyone, he would hurt her mother, would destroy their family, would ensure they ended up back on the streets. The abuse only ended when Celine finally left him, never knowing the real reason her daughter seemed so relieved. Margot had protected her mother by staying silent, bearing the trauma alone. Unable to afford professional therapy, she turned to songwriting as her outlet. In the recording studio, surrounded by beats and melodies, she found a way to transform pain into something that might help others. She released a single titled Renata, Reborn, featuring another emerging artist from the Marseille scene. The song's lyrics spoke obliquely about surviving darkness, about finding strength in brokenness, about the long road to reclaiming yourself. In interviews, she began speaking openly about childhood sexual abuse, becoming an advocate for other survivors. She talked about wanting to establish a foundation, about using her platform to break the silence that allows abuse to continue. Her mother would later describe Margot as serious beyond her years, driven by a sense of purpose that went deeper than typical artistic ambition. Despite being in the music industry, despite the parties and the nightlife that surrounded her work, Margot was not someone who lost herself in excess. She was building something, working towards something larger than herself. Alongside her music career, Margot's entrepreneurial instincts found another outlet. In 2019, she founded Belvi Naturel, a small business producing organic personal care products. The idea emerged from her own health consciousness and frustration. With conventional products filled with chemicals she could not pronounce, she began experimenting in her kitchen, formulating natural deodorants, body butters, and hair care treatments using essential oils, shea butter, and botanical extracts. She made them initially for herself, then shared them with friends who loved the products and wanted more. Recognizing an opportunity, Margot refined her formulations, designed simple, elegant packaging, and began selling at local markets and through social media. Within a year, Belvi Naturel products were stocked in several organic boutiques across Provence and were gaining attention in natural beauty communities online. Her family was proud. Celine preferred to describe her daughter as an entrepreneur rather than simply a musician, recognizing the business acumen that Margot had developed. While other artists struggled financially, Margot was building sustainable income streams, creating jobs, and contributing to the local economy. She was succeeding on multiple fronts: a rising presence in the French music scene, a successful small business owner, and an emerging voice for abuse survivors. Her future seemed boundless. She was booking better venues, attracting larger audiences, and her products were expanding into new markets. She had overcome childhood trauma, built 2 careers simultaneously, and was positioning herself to make meaningful change in the lives of others who had suffered as she had. But Margot was hiding something from everyone who loved her, a relationship that would prove fatal. A connection that existed in shadows and was managed through carefully constructed lies. And that relationship was about to destroy everything she had built. Not long after Margot launched her music career in 2017, she met someone who would alter the trajectory of her entire life. His name was Brandon Cole, though in certain circles, particularly among those familiar with the American prison system and the networks that extended from it, he was known by a different designation. Some called him B. Cole. Others simply referred to him as the American. There was one critical detail about Brandon Cole that should have ended any possibility of a relationship before it began. He was incarcerated in a federal correctional facility in California, serving a 25-year sentence for second-degree murder. He had been locked away since 2012, convicted of taking another man's life during what prosecutors described as a gang-related dispute in Los Angeles. Yet somehow, from a prison cell thousands of miles across the Atlantic, this convicted killer became Margot's boyfriend, her manager, and the invisible hand controlling nearly every aspect of her professional life. He made decisions about which venues she performed at, which producers she worked with, which collaborations she pursued. From behind bars, Brandon Cole wielded authority over a French musician's career with a level of control that defied geographical boundaries and legal restrictions. The mechanics of how this relationship began remain unclear even to those closest to Margot. Some speculate they connected through social media, through music industry contacts who knew Brandon from his pre-incarceration days when he had been involved in artist management in Los Angeles. Others suggest more complicated networks were involved, connections that facilitated relationships between incarcerated Americans and people abroad. What is certain is that by 2018, Brandon Cole had become the central figure in Margot's life. Despite the fact that they existed in completely different worlds, Brandon possessed something that transcended the physical limitations of his incarceration: connections, resources, and an organizational network that functioned seamlessly whether he was free or imprisoned. He had access to phones, to the internet through intermediaries, to financial systems that allowed him to move money and make things happen. He claimed to have contacts in the European music industry, promised to elevate Margot's career to international levels, and presented himself as someone who could open doors that would otherwise remain closed to an independent artist from Marseille. Margot's family knew almost nothing about the man who, controlled their daughter's professional life, and claimed to be her romantic partner. Celine, who spoke with Margot multiple times daily, had never met Brandon Cole, not once. She'd never seen a photograph of him. The few times they spoke were brief phone conversations, and even those were rare. Margot told her mother that Brandon was an American music executive who split his time between Los Angeles and Paris, managing artists remotely and traveling frequently for business. It was a carefully constructed deception designed to prevent questions that Margot could not answer without revealing the truth. Why would her mother need to meet him if he was constantly traveling? Why would there be photos together if he was rarely in France? The lie worked because Celine wanted to believe her daughter had found someone supportive, someone helping her navigate the difficult music industry. Years later, after everything collapsed, Celine would say something that revealed how isolated Margot had become. "I knew nothing about him, nothing at all." A mother who spoke to her daughter constantly, who was deeply involved in her life, knew absolutely nothing about the man her daughter called her fiancé and business manager. That level of secrecy does not happen by accident. It is intentional isolation, a hallmark of control. If anyone needed evidence of just how dangerous Brandon Cole could be, it existed in documented violence. Margot had a close friend in the Marseille music scene, a producer and DJ who went by the name Malik. They worked together frequently, spent time at the same venues, collaborated on tracks. To most observers, theirs was a professional friendship, nothing more. But Brandon Cole saw something different, or chose to see something different. Whether through surveillance, through reports from people in Margot's circle who fed him information, or through his own paranoid interpretations of social media posts, Brandon became convinced that Margot and Malik were romantically involved. The truth of that belief was irrelevant. In Brandon's mind, Malik represented a threat, competition, someone standing between him and complete possession of Margot. From his prison cell in California, Brandon Cole made a decision that demonstrated the full extent of his reach and his ruthlessness. He ordered violence against Malik. The details of what happened remain murky, protected by the silence that surrounds such acts. But the outcome was clear. Malik was brutally attacked in Marseille, beaten so severely that he required hospitalization. The message was unmistakable, the intent transparent. This was not random street violence. This was not an unfortunate coincidence. This was a calculated act of intimidation ordered from across an ocean by a man who could not physically reach anyone, yet possessed the resources and connections to hurt them anyway. Let that reality settle. An incarcerated man in California arranged for violence to be carried out against someone in France. And it happened exactly as he intended. The assault on Malik sent ripples through Margot's circle. Friends who knew about her relationship with Brandon began to understand what she was involved with. This was not some romantic, long-distance relationship with an industry professional. This was something far darker, far more dangerous. The message to Margot could not have been clearer. You belong to me, and anyone I perceive as a threat will face consequences. After Malik's attack, something shifted in Margot. Friends noticed she became more withdrawn, more careful about what she said and to whom. She stopped mentioning certain people, stopped attending certain events. The vibrant, outgoing performer who had been building a community in the Marseille music scene began pulling back, creating distance, isolating herself. Was she afraid? Was she trapped? Did she understand the full extent of the danger she was in? Those who knew her during this period described someone who seemed to be walking a tightrope, trying to maintain normalcy while managing a situation that was spiraling beyond her control. She continued performing, continued running Belleville Notarial, continued posting on social media as though everything was fine. But beneath the surface, those closest to her sensed something was profoundly wrong. The question that haunted everyone later was simple, yet impossible to answer. Why did she stay? Why did she continue a relationship with someone capable of such violence? Was it fear? Was it manipulation? Had Brandon convinced her that she needed him for her career? Did she believe she could somehow manage the situation? That she could keep him satisfied while slowly extracting herself? We will never know what calculations Margot was making during those months after Malik's attack. What escape? Plans she might have been formulating, what desperate hopes she was clinging to? What we know is that Brandon Cole had already demonstrated he could reach anyone, anywhere, anytime. He had proven that his jealousy was violent and his control was absolute. And he had proven that from a prison cell thousands of miles away, he had the power to hurt people. Malik's beating was a warning written in blood and bruises, whether Margot fully recognized it as such. The message had been delivered with brutal clarity. August 2023. The summer heat pressed down on Marseille with suffocating intensity. The kind of weather that made the air shimmer above the pavement and drove residents to seek refuge in air-conditioned cafes or along the Mediterranean coast. Margot had been unusually busy, juggling performance bookings across southern France, while simultaneously managing a surge in orders for Belvi Naturel. Her products had gained popularity beyond regional markets, and she was struggling to keep up with demand. On August 23rd, a Wednesday afternoon, Margot called her mother. Their conversations were frequent, sometimes occurring multiple times throughout the day. So Celine thought nothing unusual about seeing her daughter's name appear on her phone screen. But what Margot said next would echo in her mother's mind forever, replaying during sleepless nights and quiet moments when grief ambushed her without warning. "Mama, pray for me." For words, simple, yet weighted with something Celine could not immediately identify. Her maternal instinct flared instantly, that primal awareness mothers possess when their children are in danger, even when they cannot articulate why. She felt her chest tighten, felt anxiety crawl up her spine. "Why do you need prayers, ma chérie? What is happening?" Margot deflected, saying she simply wanted her mother's spiritual support, that she had important meetings coming up, that everything was fine. But Celine was not convinced. She pressed further and finally made a plea that came from somewhere deep and desperate within her. "You need to come home. Leave Paris. Leave whatever you're doing there and come back to Provence. Come back where I can see you, where you're safe." There was a pause on the line, and when Margot spoke again, her voice carried a mixture of longing and resignation. She wanted to come home. She missed her mother, missed the simplicity of Salon de Provence, missed feeling protected. She mentioned that the family was planning a gathering the following week and she wanted to be there for it. But there was a problem. "Maman, I cannot come yet. I have orders to fulfill. Customers are waiting. I need to finish this production batch first." Belvi Naturel. The business she had built from nothing, mixing formulas in her kitchen until they were perfect, creating something sustainable and her own. She could not simply abandon those responsibilities, could not let her customers down, could not walk away from commitments she had made. She promised she would come home soon, right after she completed the current orders, right after she handled a few remaining business matters. Celine did not push harder. How could she have known? How could anyone have known that this ordinary conversation about business obligations and family plans would be among their last? August 24th arrived, Thursday morning. Margot woke in her apartment in the 10th arrondissement of Paris, a modest place she had been renting while working on expanding her music career in the capital. She had business at her bank that morning, routine matters related to Belvi Naturel accounts. Everything appeared normal. She called her mother that morning. They spoke for approximately 10 minutes, covering everyday topics, the comfortable rhythm of a relationship built on constant communication. Celine said she would call back later. Throughout the day they exchanged text messages, the usual back and forth that characterized their connection. But at some point during those hours, Margot sent a message to one of her closest friends from Marseille, a cryptic text that would later seem profoundly significant. "I need to tell you something important. Can we talk soon?" Her friend responded immediately with curiosity and concern. "Of course. I'm here whenever you're ready." That conversation never happened. Whatever Margot needed to share, whatever information or decision or revelation she was carrying, died with her. We will never know if she was planning to leave Brandon Cole, if she had met someone else, if she had discovered something dangerous about him, or if she had simply reached the breaking point and was ready to reclaim her life. That afternoon, Margot was scheduled for what Brandon had arranged as a promotional photo shoot in Nice. The booking seemed legitimate on the surface, as a natural location for fashion and music photography, and having quality promotional materials was essential for an emerging artist. Margot had mentioned the shoot to her mother earlier in the week, describing it as an important opportunity for her career. Around 3 in the afternoon, a vehicle arrived outside her building on Rue du Faubourg Saint-Denis. The driver was someone Margot's friends and family had never seen before. Not someone from her usual circle, not someone from any management company they recognized. Just a stranger, arriving to transport her to what she believed was a professional engagement. Margot was dressed casually but purposefully. Jeans, a light blouse, comfortable shoes, suitable for a day of photography. She grabbed her bag, locked her apartment, and descended the stairs. As she approached the vehicle, she was on the phone with a friend, chatting about her plans. Her voice relaxed and unremarkable. She said goodbye, ended the call, and climbed into the car. The vehicle pulled away from the curb and merged into Paris traffic. Her phone sent its last message at 3:15 that afternoon. After that, silence. Complete and total silence. The constant stream of communication between Margot and her mother, the pattern that had existed for years, suddenly stopped. The messages Celine sent remained unread, marked with single gray check marks that never turned blue. The calls went unanswered, ringing endlessly before clicking to voicemail. For a mother who spoke with her daughter multiple times every single day, the silence was not just unusual, it was impossible. Something was catastrophically wrong, and with each passing hour, the certainty of that fact grew heavier. The car that picked up Margot that Thursday afternoon was not taking her to Nice for a photo shoot. It was not taking her anywhere she thought she was going. Somewhere between her apartment in Paris and a destination the driver had been given, Margot Dubois vanished from the world. And for the next 6 months, her mother would refuse to let her disappear. For a mother accustomed to hearing her daughter's voice 3 times daily, the silence that followed that 3:15 message was unbearable. Celine called Margot's phone repeatedly. No answer. She sent messages that remained unread, suspended in digital limbo with status indicators that refused to change. This was not like her daughter. This was not normal. By Friday morning, panic had fully set in. Celine contacted everyone in Margot's circle she could reach. Friends in Marseille knew nothing. Colleagues in Paris had not heard from her. Nobody had any information about where she might be or why she had gone silent so suddenly. The family attempted to reach out to the management contacts they believed were handling Margot's career. Trying to verify the photo shoot in Nice, the responses they received were confusing and contradictory. No legitimate booking agency had any record of scheduling Margot for a Thursday shoot. No photographer in Nice had been contracted for her session. The entire arrangement appeared to be fabricated. Someone had sent that driver. Someone had given Margot a time and location. Someone had convinced her to get into that vehicle, and now she was gone. The first days crawled by with agonizing slowness. No ransom demand arrived. No threatening phone call came through. No text message asked for money or made threats. Just absolute silence, which somehow felt worse than any explicit danger. After nearly 2 weeks of torment, Celine made the decision to go public. She could not sit quietly while her daughter remained missing. She announced a reward of 15,000 euros for any information leading to Margot's safe return. When that did not immediately produce results, she increased it to 30,000, then 50,000, pooling resources from extended family, selling possessions, doing whatever was necessary. But Celine did not just offer money and wait passively. She became a force of relentless determination. She appeared on France 3 regional news, on RTL radio, on online platforms. Anywhere that would give her a microphone and a few minutes to plead for her daughter's return. She contacted every journalist who would listen, every true crime podcast that covered missing persons cases, every social media influencer with a platform. She organized peaceful demonstrations outside the Commissariat de Police in Paris, not to attack law enforcement but to keep Margot's case visible, to ensure her daughter did not become just another file in an overworked system. She held vigils in Marseille, in Salon de Provence, gathering communities to pray and to remember that a real person with a real family was missing. Celine wrote directly to the Minister of the Interior, a desperate mother's plea for resources, for attention, for help. She was not accusatory or demanding. She simply wanted to understand what was being done, what leads were being pursued, what hope remained. Her public appearances were raw and unfiltered. Standing before cameras, her voice breaking with emotion, she said, "I am desperate. I need France to help me. I need everyone to help me. If you know something, please contact the police. I just want my daughter. I just want Margot home." She spoke about the future being stolen. I should be planning my daughter's wedding someday. I should be meeting grandchildren. Instead, I am searching for her body. The pain in those words was visible, undeniable, heartbreaking. Céline reached out to churches across southern France, asking them to pray, to mobilize their congregations to keep Margot's name alive. She understood that in France, despite increasing secularization, faith communities still held influence, still possessed networks that could spread information. Margot's friends joined the effort. Social media campaigns used hashtags like Trouves Margot and Ramanas la Maison. Her face appeared on posters throughout Marseille, Paris, Lyon, and beyond. The music community rallied, with artists dedicating performances to her and sharing information about her disappearance. As weeks turned into months, the emotional toll became visible. Céline aged rapidly, the stress etching new lines into her face, turning her hair grayer, bending her shoulders with weight that should not exist. Christmas approached, a season meant for family and joy. Céline made another public plea. Bring my daughter home for Christmas. But Christmas came and went. There was no miracle, no joyous reunion, just another painful day marked by absence. Bellevuille Naturelle remained closed. Without Margot to manufacture the products, manage the formulations, and handle operations, the business could not function. Another piece of her life frozen in time. The investigation seemed to move frustratingly slowly. French authorities were working the case, but they shared little information with the family, citing the need to protect investigative integrity. For a family desperate for any news, any clue, being kept in the dark was its own torture. Throughout this ordeal, one fact remained. Constant Céline refused to let her daughter become a forgotten statistic. She refused to allow Margot's face to fade from public consciousness. She refused to stop fighting. Then came February 14th, 2024, Valentine's Day. 6 months after Margot had climbed into that car and vanished. Police received information directing them to a specific location outside Paris in a rural area of Seine-et-Marne, a remote section of agricultural land far from main roads. Officers arrived at the coordinates they had been given and found what they had been told to expect: human remains, partially concealed, deteriorated by time and exposure. Near the remains, investigators found personal items scattered in the surrounding earth. A silver necklace with a small pendant, a bracelet, fragments of clothing that had survived decomposition. The location was deliberately remote, chosen by someone who understood that isolation would delay discovery, perhaps indefinitely. News of the discovery spread quickly through French media. After 6 months of desperate searching, the reality everyone had feared but refused to fully accept began settling in with crushing finality. The remains were carefully collected and transported to the Institut Médico, legal in Paris, for forensic analysis. DNA testing would require weeks. These processes cannot be rushed without compromising accuracy. But in their hearts, everyone already knew. Céline knew. Margot's friends knew. The investigators working the case knew. When the DNA results returned in early March, they confirmed what no mother should ever have to hear. The skeletal remains discovered in that remote field belonged to Margot Dubois. She had been dead since approximately late August, likely within hours or days of her disappearance. The post-mortem examination, complicated by the state of decomposition, provided the cause of death: gunshot wound to the head. This was not a struggle that escalated beyond control. This was not a crime of passion where someone lost their temper. This was an execution, cold and calculated. Someone had put a gun to her head and pulled the trigger with deliberate intent. On March 19, 2024, the Police Nationale officially upgraded the case from a missing person investigation to a homicide investigation. The Brigade Criminelle in Paris, one of France's most elite investigative units, took primary responsibility. But investigators had known something the public did not yet. In October 2023, even before Margot's body was discovered, French authorities had been working with American law enforcement on a deeply disturbing theory. They believed that instructions related to Margot's disappearance had been issued by an incarcerated individual in the United States, specifically from a federal prison in California. The implications were staggering. Someone behind bars, supposedly isolated from society, had apparently orchestrated the kidnapping and murder of a French citizen on European soil. The investigation revealed that Margot had been the victim of a contract killing. Someone had been paid to end her life. The working theory that emerged was methodical and chilling. 3 days before her disappearance, Margot had been told about the photo shoot in Nice. The booking appeared legitimate because it came through Brandon Cole, the man who managed her career. She had no reason to question it. He had arranged professional opportunities before. This seemed no different. But the shoot was fabricated, bait designed for one purpose: to get Margot into a vehicle with someone she did not know, someone who would not take her to Nice or to any photography session. According to the investigation, the driver was not working alone. He was part of a network, hired through intermediaries to ensure distance between those who ordered the killing and those who executed it. The vehicle left Paris heading southeast, but it never reached Nice. Instead, it diverted to Saint-Martin, to that remote agricultural area where screams would not be heard and where a body might remain hidden indefinitely. There, in that isolated location, Margot was killed with a single gunshot to the head. The efficiency was horrifying. Every step had been calculated, every detail planned. Her body was left partially concealed, covered enough to delay discovery, but not so thoroughly that it would never be found. Perhaps that was intentional, a final message. French investigators, working with the FBI and U.S. federal prosecutors, began building a case against Brandon Cole. Evidence suggested he had maintained contact with criminal networks despite incarceration. Phone records showed calls to numbers associated with known intermediaries. Financial transactions, traced through family members and associates on the outside, revealed payments made shortly before Margot's disappearance. The motive appeared to be exactly what those close to Margot had feared. She had tried to leave him. Friends reported that in the weeks before her death, Margot had been quietly making plans to break off the relationship. She had confided in a few trusted people that she was done, that she wanted her life back, that she was going to end things with Brandon. That cryptic message she sent her friend the day she disappeared, "I need to tell you something important," likely concerned her decision to leave. She may have been preparing to announce it publicly, to reclaim control of her career, to finally free herself from his grip. But Brandon Cole, from his prison cell thousands of miles away, had decided that if he could not control her, nobody would have her. Investigators believed he had ordered her killing within days of learning she intended to leave. The photo shoot was arranged specifically to create the opportunity. The question that remained was how to prosecute a case this complex, spanning 2 continents, involving contract killers, intermediaries, and an orchestrator behind bars who had insulated himself through layers of separation. As of November 2024. More than 15 months after Margot's remains were discovered in that desolate field, no one has been arrested. No one has been charged. Her family waits, France waits, justice waits. This is not a case of authorities sitting idle. The investigation remains intensely active, involving cooperation between French police, National, Interpol, the FBI, and U.S. federal prosecutors. But prosecuting international contract killings presents extraordinary challenges that go far beyond typical homicide cases. Investigators have identified multiple suspects and persons of interest across 2 continents. Evidence has been submitted for exhaustive forensic analysis, DNA profiles, ballistic reports, telecommunications records, financial transaction histories. All of this requires painstaking laboratory work and expert testimony that must withstand the scrutiny of defense attorneys in both French and American legal systems. Contract killings are deliberately structured to be nearly impossible to prosecute. You cannot simply arrest someone because you know they are guilty. You need evidence that survives legal challenges. You must prove who pulled the trigger. You must prove who gave the order. You must prove who paid for it. You must prove how the communication occurred, how the money moved, how the network functioned. And you need witnesses willing to testify, people brave enough to point fingers at individuals who have already demonstrated their willingness to kill. When the alleged mastermind is already serving 25 years for a previous murder, what leverage do prosecutors have? What can they threaten him with? What deal can they offer? Brandon Cole has already lost his freedom. Traditional negotiation tools become ineffective. French and American authorities continue interviewing witnesses, following financial trails, and building their case methodically. They understand they will likely get only one opportunity for prosecution. If the evidence is not absolutely airtight, defense lawyers will dismantle it in court. and Margot's accused will walk free. That cannot happen. Meanwhile, Margot's younger cousin has taken over Bellevi Naturel. The natural personal care products Margot formulated in her kitchen continue to be sold in organic boutiques across France. The business survives. The brand endures. Every bottle sold is proof that Margot's vision did not die with her. Her music remains available on streaming platforms. Renata occasionally appears on playlists about resilience and survival. New listeners discover her voice and her story, unaware when they first press play that the artist will never record another song. Celine has become an advocate for families of missing persons in France, working with organizations that support those navigating the nightmare of having a loved one vanish. She speaks publicly about the inadequacies in the system, about the need for better resources, about the particular challenges of international cases. Her daughter's death has given her a terrible expertise that she now uses to help others. The case has also sparked uncomfortable conversations in France about how incarcerated individuals maintain criminal operations from behind bars, about the international reach of organized crime networks, about the ways technology facilitates violence across vast distances. These are systemic issues that extend far beyond one tragic case. Margot's story serves as a devastating reminder that when someone views you as property rather than a person, your life is perpetually at risk. The warning signs were present throughout her relationship with Brandon Cole: the isolation from family, the control over her career and movements, the violence against anyone he perceived as a threat, the jealousy disguised as devotion. If you are in a relationship where someone controls where you go, who you see, what you do, where every assertion of independence is met with rage or threats, understand this clearly. That is not love. That is possession. And possession, when threatened, often becomes lethal. Resources exist to help people leave dangerous relationships safely. Organizations throughout France and across Europe provide support, shelter, and guidance for those trying to escape. Leaving is the most dangerous time, which is why planning and support are essential. Margot tried to leave. She made plans quietly, reached out to trusted friends, and prepared to reclaim her life. But she was dealing with someone who had already proven he would kill to maintain control, and she did not have the protection she needed when she needed it most. Her death was preventable. If authorities had understood the extent of Brandon Cole's reach, if she had felt safe enough to ask for help earlier, if the people around her had recognized the danger, she might still be performing on stages across France, still mixing formulas in her kitchen, still advocating for abuse survivors. Instead, she is buried in a cemetery in Salon-de-Provence, near the home where her mother raised her against impossible odds. Celine visits regularly, bringing flowers, speaking to her daughter as though she can still hear. Justice for Margot Dubois remains incomplete, but her story continues to resonate, continues to serve as a warning, continues to save lives by helping others recognize the signs before it is too late. That was Margot's dream, to use her pain to help others. In death, tragically, she has achieved that purpose.